in, he came and sat right in front of the Prophet, right in front of him, and he was sitting, and it said in the narration that he put his knees right up against his knees, and then he either put his hands on his own thighs or on the Prophet's thighs, and there's a difference in the hadithin on which one he did, right? So he came and he sat, and he put his knees right up against him, and he put his hands there, and then, people are astonished. Like, who is this person that coming and sitting right in front of the Prophet ﷺ like that? We don't know who he is. Like, this is the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't just come up and do that. But nobody did anything. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't do anything different either. And when he came and he sat, he started asking him questions. And he asked him about Iman. What is Iman? Right? And so the Prophet ﷺ gave the response of Iman. And he said that it's to believe in Allah, to believe in the messengers, to believe in the books, to believe in the angels, and so on, the 6 articles of faith as we know them in Islam. And then the response of the man was, Sadaqta, you've spoken the truth, as if he questioned him. And when the Prophet ﷺ gave the answer, the man, or the person asking the question says, yes, you're right. It's almost like the teacher quizzing the student, saying, what's the answer to 2 plus 2? And when the child says 4, the teacher says, yes, you're right. Good answer, right? This kind of situation. And obviously the Sahaba are stunned. They're confused. They don't know what's going on. And then he asked them, or he asked the Prophet ﷺ, the second question was, what is Islam? What is Islam? And then the Prophet ﷺ responded back with the response of Islam which were the 5 pillars of Islam, right? The Shahada, Salah, Sawm, the Shahada, testimony of faith, prayers, fasting, zakat, and Hajj, for those who are able to do so. And what I want to point out to you that these 2 questions are like the basic tenets of our faith. These are the basic things that we have to do, right? When you ask the children that are going to Sunday school, or you ask somebody who's a newly, converted Muslim or reverted Muslim, you ask them what are the 5 pillars of Islam, most of them are going to be able to answer them. Most of them will be able to answer that these are the 5 pillars of Islam. When you ask them about what are your articles of faith, most of them will be able to tell you the 6 things that we have to believe in, right? These are like very basic things that we all know of, right? And I'm going to just mention at the end of this hadith JIBRIL, right? When the Prophet or the Sahaba, or the Prophet ﷺ asked the Sahaba, who was that man? And they obviously said, Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam, that Allah and His Messenger knows best. The Prophet ﷺ responded back saying that was Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, who came to teach you your religion, right? He came to teach you your religion. So he's coming, asks the Prophet ﷺ these questions, and then he goes back, and when the Jibreel alayhi salam leaves, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that was the angel Jibreel, and he came to teach you your religion. So we know a couple things, right? One is that Jibreel alayhi salam came obviously by the command of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And he came with specific questions to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that the Sahaba around could hear the answer and know it themselves, right? And you think about it, you're sitting in a class and the students and teachers are asking questions back and forth. You understand the topic a lot better once there's that dialogue between, right? Rather than just reading it from a book or hearing it in a one-way, one-direction lecture from the teacher. You'll learn it a lot better when there's like a two-way dialogue. Like, students are asking questions and teachers are responding. Just a little tidbit from that. But what I want to point out is the third question that that Jibreel alayhi salam asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third question, and that was man ihsan. what is ihsan? What is ihsan? And as I said, that most people, when you ask them the articles of faith, will be able to tell you. When you ask them about what is Islam or the 5 pillars of Islam, they'll be able to tell you. But then you come and ask people, what is ihsan? And this is the third question that JIBRIL alayhi salam asked the Prophet ﷺ in this situation. So you can imagine how important ihsan is to our deen. How important ihsan, this term ihsan, is to our deen. That the Jibreel alayhi salam asked the Prophet ﷺ, what is ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ responds back, saying, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That it's to worship Allah as though you see Him. It's to worship Allah. Ihsan, this word ihsan, is to worship Allah as though you see Him. And even though you're unable to see Him, Allah Azza wa Jal, even though you're unable to see Him, know for a fact that He sees you. This is ihsan in worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you think about, an example is like, I'm in a situation at work sometimes that I have to give a presentation to people, right? I have to stand in front of a crowd, and I have my PowerPoint slides behind me, and I have to give a presentation to people. And sometimes they're small groups, sometimes they're large groups. Sometimes it's to executives, sometimes it's to, our customers, whoever it is. But one thing I do beforehand is I go into my hotel room or into my office or wherever it is, and I practice that presentation. I practice it, right? And I'm standing there, whether it's in front of a mirror or just in front of my computer or something, and I practice that presentation so that I pretend like, or I imagine that entire crowd of people is sitting in front of me, or those executives are sitting at the table, and I'm standing in front of them and giving this presentation. And you can think about what's going through your mind as you prepare for that presentation. That you want to do everything that when the time comes to it, when the time comes for the actual presentation, that you want it to go flawless. There's no